We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Modern Divorce Podcast. And now, a word from our sponsor.
Hi there, listeners. I'm Billie, the owner of Modern Law, and I'm here to talk to you about something that I believe can truly make a difference in people's lives. It's called SoberLink, the ultimate alcohol monitoring device. At Modern Law, we're all about helping individuals navigate the complexities of family law, and sometimes that involves dealing with alcohol-related issues. That's why I'm excited to tell you about SoberLink, our trusted partner and sponsor of the Modern Divorce Podcast. From real-time alcohol testing to its sleek and portable design, the tech of this device is top-notch. Facial recognition, tamper-proof results that are accurate and honest. This device can be core-ordered, or by listening today, you can receive $50 off your device by going to soberlink.com/modern. I stand by SoberLink because it works. I've seen it make a positive impact on countless lives. It's not just a device, it's a lifeline for those on their journey to recovery. We believe in empowering individuals to make positive changes in their lives. SoberLink is an invaluable partner on that journey, and I'm proud to endorse it. Again, visit www.soberlink.com/modern for $50 off your device and to learn more. Hello, welcome to the Modern Divorce Podcast, special edition. I'm Billie Tarasio today, joined by Lance Sandage, a good friend of mine who is taking time out of his Christmas Eve to join me to talk about what is happening in our community with the Gilbert goons and the crime going on. Lance, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Good, Billie. Happy holidays and Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so a couple disclaimers. I'm an Arizona attorney. Lance is in Kansas. He is not an Arizona attorney, and nevertheless, he is going to be giving us his expertise in criminal law and help us understand this investigation and what might be going on. None of what I am saying or Lance is saying is your legal advice. Get your own lawyer, all that jazz. So, Lance,
Yes.
how long have you been practicing criminal law?
I've been practicing 29 years, exclusively criminal, for probably the last 27 or 28 years.
Okay. And you've been involved in a lot of cases involving FBI, gangs, complex investigations.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of our sweet spot. We're a small law firm and based in Kansas City. We are two-person law firm with a paralegal, and we do handle complex criminal investigations, both violent crime and white collar. I've done capital litigation, so I've defended people charged with murders that, if convicted, could face the death penalty. So yeah, we've kind of experienced all of that over the last 28 years.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you giving me your expertise.
Well, I don't know if that'll be expertise, but I'm glad to provide whatever value to you and to others that I can.
One of the things you asked me before we hopped on is like, why am I interested in this? Why am I even talking about this? Why am I spending time and resources on something that is outside of my area of practice? And it's because I have teenagers and I live in this community, and Gilbert is ranked the second safest city in the country of our size. And so we thought that we basically lived in a place that was crime free. And just in the last 2 weeks have become aware of that not being true. For me, it's been in the last 2 weeks, I found out that there is a group of teenagers or multiple groups that are terrorizing the community and regularly engaging in awful, awful assaults. And so now it's all coming out of nowhere. And so we're dealing, I think, as a community with some shock.
Yeah, we all don't want that in our community. That's pretty a fair statement. I live in a community where crime is relatively low as well, and it's scary when you hear about that stuff. So it makes sense, Billie.
Yeah, and we're talking in our backyards, like in places that I'm at all the time, and I never ever saw it. So, it's crazy, and I've got people emailing me and DMing me saying, my kids are scared, and we tried to get help from a school and they're not helping us, and nobody's talking. And so it just feels like I feel a little bit of outrage.
That's fair. Well, using your platform to inform others there's probably value in that. So hopefully the community appreciates that.
I hope so. I hope so. I hope we can help get this cleaned up and wrapped up. But let's talk about kind of what's going on. So, just a little bit of background. I had heard that a boy was killed, and there were no arrests, but I didn't really understand what was happening until an AZ Central article came out with allegations that this boy who died, Preston Lord, was uh, just the latest in a series of victims by the same or similar group of boys that was randomly attacking people, and that they were identifying themselves as the Gilbert goons, and that even since that attack on Preston that killed him, there have been other attacks that are recorded in public by these same groups of boys. And so, yeah, the community is going crazy. And the other reason that the community is going crazy is because everybody pretty much thinks they know who was involved in the attack based on Snapchat, social media posts, and what kids are saying. So tell me, have you ever seen anything like this?
I mean, I think that's pretty common, honestly. One, as a criminal defense attorney, I'm always going to say kids, anybody is always innocent until proven guilty. The state works at a very slow pace on these type of cases. It's not unusual. Yeah, social media and today in 2023 and moving forward, it's a large part of almost every criminal investigation. I anecdotally will tell people that in the beginnings of our days, we would get a couple of binders of evidence, police reports and lab reports, and now it'll be thousands of gigabytes of information, and most of it is social media or forensics off of people's phones. So, and that takes a lot of time, not only for a defense attorney or a defense team to look at, but also for the state when they're investigating.
So when you have this amount of evidence, does it actually make it harder or easier in terms of criminal law, either defending or prosecuting?
I can't really speak specifically to a prosecutor. I mean, it's obviously anytime there's more volume, that slows things down, and that can kind of be a pressure point. Exactly of what you're talking about. The community, the pressure point the community might have. They want immediate justice or reaction or something done, and the state is going to be careful in that because there's a lot of evidence that they have to go through, and they're not going to bring charges until they felt like they have a handle on all of that evidence. As far as a defense attorney or defending somebody, yeah, it's very challenging because there's just so much to go through. And candidly, clients sometimes don't make the best decisions. That's why they become my clients. And then also they talk about it and they record it on videos or they social media. And so that's there forever in most cases. And then it comes back and you sit through a trial where you listen to jail phone calls, or you watch videos of people, your client recording things or pictures from Facebook, and you can't. It's hard to defend that sometimes.
Sure. Okay. One of the things that people are talking about is civil lawsuits, and whether or not these parents are liable, whether or not they can be sued. What's your take on that?
I mean, it's not uncommon in any criminal case. There's always going to generally be a parallel or another claim, a civil claim, where the plaintiff, the person that brings a lawsuit, would have some sort of in a civil lawsuit. There's money in play. Where in criminal cases, it's freedom, candidly. And so, yeah, there's always parallel claims that can be had. More often than not, you don't see the civil claims until after criminal cases have either been brought, or often until they've been concluded either by a guilty plea or a trial with a conviction or an acquittal. And I think the example that I give in these situations when talking to clients and people is I think O.J. Simpson trial, even though that seems like forever ago, that's a really, I think, a simple example, right? O.J. was tried, acquitted of the criminal case, and then soon thereafter, the Brown family brought a civil suit against him for basically the exact same claims and got a civil judgment against him. So I think that's how you see it more often, is criminal and then civil, but there's nothing keeping them both from happening at the same time.
If you do the civil suit, well, actually, do the do the criminal and the civil suits, they both have their own discovery process. They both get to gather their own information. Does it get shared?
No, not normally. The state, who normally has the evidence in a criminal investigation, will not share that evidence in the civil case,
So
especially when the go ahead.
the victims won't get the evidence that the prosecution has.
I mean, this would be one of those times where I can't really weigh in on what Arizona law might look like. But I will say this, that the general rules are that civil law enforcement or prosecutor's office are not required to turn over discovery to civil lawyers, especially before a criminal case has been brought.
Sure, that makes sense. Okay, so in this case, one of the issues is that you've got crimes happening in multiple jurisdictions that people are now tying together as gang activity. So we've got a whole lot of like layers to discuss here. And one of the municipalities has invited the FBI in to aid in the investigation. Why does that happen?
Anytime smaller communities have resource restrictions, so they just don't have the ability to do an investigation that is complex in nature. I don't know if that's the case for this community, but it's not unheard of that the federal government has a lot of resources, and the FBI has digital teams that can look at social media and do cell phone investigations, and maybe local law enforcement doesn't have that. Look, the federal government, FBI, they are the best at investigating complex, difficult cases, and so they might just ask for some help on that. I don't think it means that anybody should read into it that the federal government is investigating these crimes, but then again, they might be as well.
Oh, okay. So just because the FBI comes in to aid in an investigation does not mean that federal crimes will take place or that federal charges will be brought.
No,
Okay.
not all.
Right.
You can see federal law enforcement in kidnapping cases or just complex cases. They'll get involved in and share resources to help that community or that local law enforcement resolve that investigation. That does not mean that the federal government will also bring charges.
Another question that the community has is if it's clear to the community that somebody is guilty, why would law enforcement wait to make an arrest?
Well, that's a very difficult question to answer, honestly, and it's hard for me since I'm a criminal defense attorney to try to jump into the head of a prosecutor. But what the community thinks and what the prosecutor thinks, they have far more information at their disposal and resources and evidence that we might not have. That's one. Two, there's a variety of different crimes that they could be investigating. One could be the alleged assaults against the person, but there could be more in play, and more people are being investigated for a wide range of crimes, and so they don't want to disrupt that investigation by bringing one charge, and they're looking at other charges.
Okay, so if they're investigating multiple charges, let's say they're looking at drugs and assaults and sexual assaults or whatever, they'll wait to gather all the information before they charge any of the crimes.
I think that's a fair way. I mean, like, it's a very fact specific type of inquiry what you're asking, so I don't think any two cases line up the same way. And especially if you're talking about multiple jurisdictions involved, law enforcement are going to have to collaborate on that. And again, going back to something we talked about a few minutes ago, in the digital world and all of the social media that really does slow down investigations quite a bit. They have to be very particular about how they acquire it. Just because they see it on the internet, that might not be admissible into court. So they have to go back to the source code, whether that's Facebook or Snapchat, and try to get it so they can bring it into evidence. Just because we see it doesn't mean that they could ever play it in front of a jury.
I'm really glad you mentioned that. It makes a lot of sense and it'll help answer a lot of questions that the public has. Another question that is coming up a lot is the question of vicarious liability, felony murder. if there were many people involved in the assault that ended up killing the teenage boy, Preston, would all people involved be charged with murder?
If the state believes that they can find evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that one or more people committed a crime, then they're free to bring those charges if they're ready to do that. It's hard to say about those type of questions without knowing more of the facts. And again, it's easy to jump to conclusions when it just seems so plain and obvious, but there are just so many different things that are in play on the law enforcement side that they're trying to slow and steady. And honestly, even as a criminal defense attorney, makes my cases and my ability to defend harder. But as a member of a community, you would want your law enforcement to get it right the first time, because they don't get second chances.
Okay. And talk to me about co-conspirator liability. How does that work?
I don't know what Arizona's, if they even have a conspiracy statute at the state level, but in a conspiracy case, if I think maybe I'm big on examples. If you decide to rob a bank and you ask someone to be a getaway driver, and that person agrees to be the getaway driver, but did not know that a co-conspirator, somebody else that was robbing the bank, brought a gun, and they thought that there weren't going to be guns involved, and they went in to rob the bank, and that person discharged a firearm, maybe even killing somebody, the getaway driver could be held responsible because that person agreed to conspire to commit the robbery of the bank, and so therefore they're responsible for the collateral consequences from that.
I do think that's relevant because at least the prevailing theory currently is that these boys didn't necessarily intend to kill Preston, but it happened. And so if they intended to assault him, then they could still be charged with murder. Is that correct?
I mean, most states have a variety of different homicide classifications. Murder in what we commonly call murder in the first degree, that is premeditated murder. That means that premeditation can happen very quickly, but it is that you were premeditated to kill that person. Then there's murder in the second degree, which can be felony murder, like what you just asked earlier about, and it can also be what we call heat of passion. So a bar fight turns in and someone dies. That can sometimes be what we would consider murder in the second degree. And then there's what we normally call manslaughters, and that normally is some sort of reckless behavior that results in death.
Okay. Normally, when juveniles are involved in crimes, are their parents held accountable for anything?
Again, I that's a tough question. I mean, parents, not always, not often, to answer your question. I mean, we could come up with 100 examples where it would, and we can probably come up with 100 examples where it wouldn't. So I think the best answer to that question is the law enforcement is just going to examine the facts of the case and just determine all of that.
Okay. So if parents knew about it, then is it possible they would be held responsible?
What do you mean by new? I mean, I'll throw it back at you. What do you mean by new about it?
I mean, yeah. So let's pretend, and I have no idea if this is true. This is completely hypothetical. Let's pretend that the parents of some children knew that their children were involved in activity that involved fighting random people. And the prosecution could prove that the parents knew that their children were engaged in this type of activity. Do they have any liability?
I think that'd be a really tough case.
So no, most of the time juveniles are independent of their parents, and their crimes are treated independently.
I mean, I think that's probably a fair answer. Again, I'm not trying to backtrack on the answer, but that is so fact specific.
Okay.
Now, civil liability, and I'm not a civil attorney, but civil liability might have a different answer to that question. But from a criminal liability standpoint, that's probably a pretty hard connection to make.
Yeah. I don't know that I've ever heard of a parent being criminally charged for crimes of their children. I've never heard of that.
Yeah. I mean, it would be, I've seen situations where there's been at least investigation or allegations where a young person, a juvenile, is driving a vehicle and they're aware that they've driven it recklessly, and then the parents or someone held responsible, or they try to make them being held responsible, or they have weapons in their home and they don't do a good enough job restricting those weapons from their kids. And so you'll see an investigation into parents in those situations. House parties where people get injured can sometimes, or criminal behavior happens, parents can be investigated for that type of allowing that to happen.
Sure. And that may be an issue here, since
Oh,
this assault happened at a house party
yeah,
hosted
maybe.
by a father. So we don't know what's happening there. We do know that the police department said that they had executed over 59 search warrants at a certain point in time. Now, is any of that information public record?
No.
No. Are arrests public record?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay, so what is public when it comes to criminal
I mean,
records?
if someone was arrested and charged, it would probably become a public record. But if you were to go up to the local police department and say, I want Lance's criminal record and I don't have any convictions, but I was arrested and never charged, you're probably not going to get a copy of that.
Got it. Okay. Super helpful. Let's see. Have I missed anything? You've worked on cases with gangs. How are those treated differently from individual criminal cases?
That's fair. I don't know if I've dealt with allegations that our clients have been involved in gangs that are normally involved in drug or robberies of location businesses. And I mean, those are extremely complex because those can trigger very, I wouldn't want complex criminal statutes, because you're trying to do kind of what you've asked a couple different times, is you're trying to hold individuals maybe responsible criminally, which means they go to prison for other people's conduct, right? And a gang's conduct. And so they're way more involved, and they require a lot of work on the behalf of law enforcement to try to connect those dots. It's a lot easier when there's just if it's a single crime of a single assault of two people in a fight, then I think it's easier for law enforcement to investigate that and bring a charge than if they're going to be trying to connect the dots and trying to figure out what a group of people, whether we call them a gang or an association or whatever we want to call them, what they do collectively, and if the gang has a goal. Are they put together as truly a gang where they're doing it for financial benefit or retribution for whatever the reason, or is it just a group of people that call themselves a gang, but they all kind of just do their own thing?
Okay, so all that matters.
It all matters. Yeah. I mean, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate this. I think that the community will really appreciate these answers. I really do. So I appreciate you, and Merry Christmas.
Yeah. Bye-bye, Billie. Have a good one. Take care.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to the Modern Divorce Podcast. Remember, anything you've heard today or anything you read online is not the replacement for actual consultation with an attorney and does not create an attorney-client relationship. Even if you called in and we spoke to you, you were anonymous and we don't have your details and you have not become a client of Modern Law. However, we would love to speak with you, or you should seek out the advice of legal counsel or counseling or any other expert near you. And if you have an idea for a show topic or you need to speak with an attorney in Arizona, you can reach me at info@mymodernlaw.com.